Christina, do you use nested if statements?
I do every once in a while, but I'll be honest with you, sometimes it gets so confusing, both in creating them and if I receive them from somebody else to figure out what's going on in them.
They can be difficult to debug because they're so long. And one of the things that we have in the new version of Excel is something called the ifs function,
Okay.
which replaces the need for the nested if.
Oh, wow.
It actually allows us to make an easier to read if statement with multiple conditions.
Okay.
So let's look at the syntax first of all. You have the ifs, and your first thing is your logical test followed by your value if it's true. These must appear in pairs. Logical test, value. Logical test, value. So each time it has the test, if the test comes through as true, then the value listed is the value that will appear in the cell, and it stops searching down the rest of the string.
Okay. So can you do a function in there?
Yes.
Okay, great.
You can. So you could say, if this is true, then do a percentage or something along those lines. You can put that in your value if true. And you can have up to 127 pairs.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, and it's not advisable probably to do that unless absolutely necessary, because it still becomes something rather cumbersome and hard to debug or test.
Sure.
But you can do it. And it does make it somewhat easier for you to work with. So let's go and look at a spreadsheet where I have an ifs function put in here.
All right.
So what you'll see is I have just grades, okay? So we have various grades, and my ifs function is here in cell B24. So if we look up here, what I'm telling it is what grade to do, and it's looking in column A at the information. So it's saying if the information here in cell A24 is greater than 89, then it's going to put an A in there. And you'll notice the A is in quotes because whenever we have text that we want to put into a cell within a function, we put it in quotes.
And that hasn't changed.
That has not changed. So you have that, and of course in this case that was false because 86 is not greater than 89. So it looks to the next one and it says, is it greater than 79? You put in a B. In this case, that's our true. Function stops, it quits pursuing the rest of it. Now what I want you to be aware of is as you go down this line, if it gets all the way to the end and nothing is true, then it's going to put an error in your cell. It's going to say NA. Okay. So one of the ways you can counteract that is in your very last pair, if you have something you want it to do if nothing else is true, then you put your criteria as true.
Okay.
And then your value return as whatever you would want it to put in there. So instead of doing a formula here of is A24 greater than 0, then I put true instead for it to return the F. So you do have that option for the last one. Also, if you put in a criteria and you don't have a matching value, you will get an error message saying that you're missing something.
Okay.
So as you can see here, it has put the grades in for me, and once you've created that formula, you really don't have to do that again. Now, one of the things that they've also done in relation to this is max ifs and min ifs, and it works exactly the same way. In this spreadsheet, we have a max ifs here in cell D24. So we have, first of all, the range that our answer is going to come from, A24 through A31, which you'll notice are these grade numbers.
Okay.
Then in C24 through C31, we have our criteria range. So when we establish what the criteria is, this is the range it's going to look at. The last thing we have is the criteria. So it's going to come over here and look in this range for 5. And you'll notice we have 5 here in cell C25, and in cell C27, and in cell C31. Now of those 3, what it's going to do then is come back to this column in my range A24 through A31, and of those 3 that had a 5 in column C, it's going to look for the highest value.
Okay. So what we're doing with max ifs is we have a return column of what we want to show up if it meets certain criteria. And then those criteria, in our case, in the value column, we're looking at those, and then of the options, it's going to return the highest one?
Right.
All right. So this is not a whole lot different than max, though, right?
It actually is, because I can have more than one criteria.
Okay.
I'm going to show you that, but let me just mention for you, there is a min ifs, and I did this one over here so I could find the lowest in the same range, and it's set up pretty much the same way.
Okay.
But back to your question, I can actually do multiple criteria to look at what we want to pull out of this column. So I have a formula over here that does this. So I have some information. My data that I'm looking at is this range of A2 through A7,
Okay, so the weight.
the weight. Then my first criteria range is B2 through B7, which we have here is the grade.
Okay.
And you'll notice in the formula we're saying look for B.
Okay.
So we have B in this cell, and this cell. Now let's go back to the function here. After we've established those, we're going to do a second criteria range, which is in column D, D2 through D7, which is the level.
Okay.
And we're saying only choose the ones that are greater than 100.
Okay.
Of course, they've got to be greater than 100 and also be over here because of my first range.
All right, and then it will return what's in the highest number that's in the weight column.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we have several that are over 100 in here, but what it then has to do is find ones that are greater than 100 that are B and come back here and choose the one that is the highest value, which would be this one right here.
Okay, and that's what we got in F1.
Exactly. And so max ifs will do that for us. Of course, you do have min ifs available for this particular approach too. And the idea here is I can do multiple criteria.
Okay, I can see the value in that.
So the beauty of this is you actually have max ifs available to you. You have min ifs. You also have average ifs and sum ifs.
Easy for you to say.